Look at him, little punk!
The Memphis Midway Fair had never been this quiet. Families stood frozen, cotton candy melting in their hands. Carnies leaned out of their booths. The tilt-a-whirls sat still, music off, operator watching. Even the air seemed to hold its breath as Jim Rohn walked through the entrance, hand resting on Ethan's shoulder, 50 bikers fanning out behind them in a slow, deliberate procession. Not a mob, a family. Tanner, Cooper, and Liam stood near the ring toss booth, flanked by their parents. Tanner's father Mike had his arms crossed, jaw tight, trying to look defiant. Cooper's mother Linda clutched her purse like a shield. Liam stood alone, his mother still at work, eyes red from a sleepless night. Sergeant Carver and 2 other Memphis PD officers stood off to the side, hands near their belts but not on them. Carver had made it clear, unless someone threw a punch, they were observers, not enforcers. Jim stopped 10 feet from the boys. The silence stretched. Then Jim spoke, voice low but carrying across the fairground like a sermon. "You think this patch is a costume?" he asked, tapping the River King's rocker on his chest. "You think my kids' wheels are a joke?" Tanner opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Jim took a step closer. "This vest my son wears, it's not dress-up, it's family. Every man and woman standing behind me right now would take a bullet for him. And you 3 thought it'd be funny to shove him into the dirt and laugh while he cried." Cooper's mother tried to step forward. "Now wait, just a—" "Ma'am," Seth said quietly, stepping into her path. "With respect, this isn't about you. This is about what your son did." Linda's mouth snapped shut. Jim knelt down, eye level with Ethan, and said gently, "You want to say something, buddy?" Ethan's hands shook on the armrests of his trike. He looked at the boys, at the cameras, at the crowd. Then, slowly, he spoke. "You hurt me," he said, words halting but clear. "But I'm not your joke." The fairground was silent. Jim stood, turning back to the boys. "You posted that video for laughs. You got views. You got comments. You got what you wanted. But you also got seen. And now the whole city knows who you are." He gestured to the bikers behind him. "These men and women, they're veterans, fathers, mothers, mechanics, teachers. They've served this country, they've buried brothers. They've fought wars you can't imagine. And every single one of them is here because you decided a disabled kid in a vest was content." Tanner's father tried to bluster. "You can't just—" "We're not here to hurt them," Jim said, cutting him off. "We're here to teach them." Risk stepped forward, voice hard. "You want to know what that 22 patch means?" He tapped the small number stitched on his cut. 22 veterans a day take their own lives. Jim almost became one of them. You know what stopped him? That kid right there. Ethan looked up, surprised. Jim's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Seth spoke next, voice softer. "I was a combat medic. I've held dying men in my arms. I've seen what cruelty does, and I've seen what kindness can do. You 3 have a choice right now. You can keep being the boys who laughed, or you can become the men who learned." Liam broke first. Tears streamed down his face. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I'm so sorry. I didn't think—" "That's the problem," Jim said. "You didn't think. You saw a kid who was different, and you made him a target." Tanner's voice cracked. "What do you want from us?" Jim looked at Ethan, then back at the boys. "3 things," he said. 1. You apologize. On camera. Same platforms you used to humiliate him. 2. You volunteer. Disability Center, VA Hospital, somewhere you can see the people you mocked as human beings. 3. You meet with Seth once a week for a month. You listen to stories. You learn what respect actually means." He paused. "Or," Jim said, "we let the internet handle it. Let the comments and the doxing and the shame do what they do. Your choice." Tanner looked at his father, who said nothing. Cooper looked at his mother, who looked away. Liam looked at the ground. Then, one by one, they nodded. "We'll do it," Liam whispered. Jim turned to Ethan. "What do you think, Lil King? You believe them?" Ethan stared at the boys for a long moment. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. Liam stepped forward, shaking, and took it. The fairground exhaled. Cameras flashed. A few people clapped. Sergeant Carver nodded once and stepped back. Jim rested his hand on Ethan's shoulder and said quietly, "Next time you think about pushing someone weaker than you, remember this day. Remember who stood behind him." The River Kings didn't leave immediately. They stayed, walking through the fair with their families, buying Ethan funnel cakes and winning him another stuffed tiger. Kids asked for photos. Veterans saluted. A little girl in a wheelchair rolled up to Ethan and said, "You're so cool." And for the first time since that night, Ethan smiled without fear. By Sunday morning, the video had changed. Not the original that was still out there, still viral, still cruel. But now it was buried under a flood of new clips. Ethan rolling at the head of 50 bikes. Jim kneeling beside his son, speaking quietly. Liam breaking down, apologizing. The River Kings standing silent and strong, a wall of leather and honor. And the comments had shifted. "This is what real men look like. I'm not crying. You're crying. Bikers get a bad rap. But this is family." 2 fingers down for Lil King. A Memphis news station ran a segment titled, "When a Community Stands Up," the story of Ethan Rohn and the River Kings MC. They interviewed Jim, who spoke carefully, choosing his words like a man who'd learned the weight of them. "We're not heroes," Jim said. "We're just fathers and brothers who believe that when someone knocks down one of ours, we pick them up. That's what family does." The anchor asked, "What do you want people to take away from this?" Jim looked directly into the camera. "That bikers aren't the monsters you think we are. We're veterans. We're parents. We're people who've seen the worst of the world and decided to protect the best of it. And if you ever see a kid like Ethan being mocked or hurt, don't scroll past. Stand up. Because that's what America is supposed to be about." The clip went viral. Biker pages across the country reposted it. Veterans groups shared it. Disability advocacy organizations praised it. A GoFundMe someone had started for Ethan's medical expenses hit $50,000 in 2 days. At Cordova High, Tanner, Cooper, and Liam returned to school on Monday to a very different reception. Some kids avoided them, others confronted them. One girl said flatly, "You're disgusting." But Liam had already started volunteering at the Memphis VA hospital. He'd met a man named Carlos, a Marine who'd lost both legs in Afghanistan, who told him stories about brotherhood and sacrifice that made Liam realize how small his own world had been. Tanner struggled more. His father was furious, embarrassed, threatening lawsuits that never materialized. But when Tanner showed up at the disability center for his first shift, a little boy in a wheelchair asked if he was friends with Lil King. Tanner didn't know how to answer. Cooper's mother, Linda, had gone quiet on Facebook. She'd watched the news segment 3 times, seen the way Jim Rohn spoke about his son, and realized she'd been wrong about bikers. About a lot of things. At the River Kings clubhouse, life returned to normal, or as normal as it ever was. But now, when they rode through Memphis, people waved, kids pointed, veterans saluted. And Ethan? Ethan became a legend. Other MCs from across Tennessee reached out, inviting the River Kings to charity rides. A children's hospital in Nashville asked if Ethan would visit kids in their mobility clinic. A custom wheelchair company offered to build him an even better rig, free of charge. Jim sat with Ethan one night, scrolling through messages on his phone. "You're famous, buddy," Jim said, smiling. Ethan looked up, eyes bright. Am I, really, a king? Jim pulled him close. You always were. We just made sure everybody else knew it. And somewhere in Memphis, a little girl in a wheelchair saw Ethan's story and asked her father, "Can I get a vest like that?" Her father, a former Navy corpsman, smiled and said, "Let me make some calls." Because that's what legends do. They inspire. 6 months later, the Memphis Midway Fairgrounds hosted a new event, Accessibility and Respect Day, sponsored by the River Kings MC and the city of Memphis. The parking lot was packed not just with bikes, but with adaptive trikes, mobility scooters, wheelchairs decked out with LED lights and custom paint. Kids with disabilities and their families mingled with bikers in cuts, veterans in unit patches, and community members who'd come to celebrate. At the center of it all, rolling at the head of the procession, was Ethan Rohn. His wheelchair had been upgraded still chopper style, but now with better suspension, brighter lights, and a custom paint job that read Lil King in chrome letters. His vest had a new patch, a small rocker that said Respect. Behind him rolled a dozen other kids in adaptive rides, each one decorated, each one proud. Jim rode beside him on his road glide, watching his son lead the way, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. The ride rolled through Memphis, down Summer Avenue, past the barbecue joints and churches and pawn shops, and everywhere they went, people stopped and waved. Veterans saluted. A group of kids on a playground cheered. A cop on a motorcycle joined the convoy, lights flashing, clearing the way. At a stoplight, a man in a truck leaned out his window and shouted, "2 fingers down for Lil King." Ethan, grinning, raised his hand and dropped 2 fingers. The convoy rolled into a park where a stage had been set up. Local officials gave speeches about inclusion and community. The River Kings presented a check to the Memphis VA hospital. A children's choir sang. And then Jim took the microphone. 6 months ago, he said, voice steady, my son was shoved out of his chair and turned into a joke. Today he's leading a movement. Not because of me, not because of the River Kings, but because he refused to let cruelty define him. He looked at Ethan, who sat at the front of the crowd, surrounded by other kids. This vest he wears, Jim said, tapping his own cut. It's not about being tough. It's about being family. It's about standing up when the world tries to knock you down. And it's about showing the next generation that strength isn't about fists, it's about heart. The crowd erupted in applause. Later, as the sun set over Memphis, Jim stood at a small memorial wall near the clubhouse, running his fingers over the names of brothers he'd lost. The 22 patch on his vest felt lighter now. "We did right by him, boys," he whispered. Behind him, Risk and Seth walked up, beers in hand. "Hell of a ride, Prez," Risk said. Jim smiled. "Yeah, it was." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the last light fade over the city. Then Seth said quietly, "You know what the best part is?" "What's that?" "Tanner, Cooper, and Liam all showed up today, volunteered, helped set up. Liam even apologized to Ethan again." Jim nodded. "Good. That's what this was about, not revenge, change." Risk grinned. "You're getting soft." "Old man," Jim laughed. "Maybe, but I'm okay with that." As they walked back toward the clubhouse, the sound of engines filled the air, new riders arriving, families gathering, the Brotherhood growing. And somewhere in the crowd, Ethan Rohn sat surrounded by other kids, telling stories, laughing, wearing his LIL King vest with pride. Because they'd tried to turn a biker's disabled kid into a joke. But Memphis remembered him as something else. The day the River Kings arrived, Lil King stopped being a meme and became a legend written in chrome, leather, and 2 fingers down. And across America, in small towns and big cities, other kids in wheelchairs saw Ethan's story and thought, maybe I can be a king too. Because that's what legends do. They show you what's possible. And they remind you that when the world knocks you down, your family picks you up. Every single time. Teenagers shoved a biker's disabled kid out of his chair at a Memphis fair and posted it online for laughs. By morning, hundreds of thousands had watched him hit the dirt. But when his father's biker club saw the patch on that boy's vest, they didn't just comment, they rolled. Neon from the Memphis Midway Fair bled into the humid Tennessee night, turning the cracked parking lot into a river of red and blue. The roar of the nearby I-40 mixed with the distant thump of country rap and the squeal of the tilt-a whirl. Kids ran wild with cotton candy melting down their fists. The air hung thick with the smell of funnel cakes, exhaust, and spilled Bud Light. Somewhere near the back fence, a carny barked at a ring-toss booth, while a couple argued over a lost wallet. It was the kind of night where Memphis felt alive and messy and loud, the kind of night Jim Rohn used to avoid before his son taught him how to live again. Near the back fence, where the fairgrounds met the gravel and the noise thinned out just enough to breathe, a row of Harleys and old diners gleamed under floodlights. Chrome caught the neon like captured lightning. On their tanks and cuts, one name repeated in bold stitching and hand-painted letters, River Kings MC, Memphis, Tennessee. Propped beside a black road glide with a Tennessee flag fluttering from the antenna, Jim Rohn watched the crowd. Mid-40s, lean but hard, beard threaded with grey, knuckles scarred from wars overseas and mistakes back home. His leather vest was worn but clean, a silver 13 patch stitched near his heart. A small 22 patch under it that only other vets ever commented on. He didn't smile easily. Hadn't in years. Not since Fallujah. Not since the night he came home and realized the war had followed him into his own kitchen. Except when he looked at Ethan. Ethan Rohn was 12, all bright eyes and crooked grin, hands that sometimes shook and legs that refused to cooperate the way other kids did. Cerebral palsy had twisted his gait and slowed his speech, but not his spirit. Tonight he sat in a low, custom-built wheelchair that looked more like a tiny chopper on 4 fat wheels, welded struts, ape-hanger hand grips, little LED strips running along the frame that Risk had wired up last summer. Across his chest, over a faded Memphis Grizzlies t-shirt, a miniature black leather vest read, Lil King, River King's MC family. "Hey, Lil King," called out Risk, a grinning, tattooed biker with a scar over one eye and a laugh that could crack concrete, swinging off his softail to ruffle Ethan's hair. "You gonna outcool us again, or what?" Ethan laughed, the sound a little labored but pure. "Already did," he managed, words slow but determined. The brothers exploded in laughter. Seth, the quieter one with glasses and a combat medic patch on his cut, knelt to adjust one of the chair's front casters. "Wheels good. You rollin' straight, little man." Ethan beamed. This was his world. Chrome, leather, the low rumble of idling engines he couldn't hear clearly but could feel in his bones. He couldn't ride a bike like his dad or the others. So they built him one that fit his body and his pride. Jim watched him go, heart clenched and wide open at the same time, as Ethan rolled toward the lights of the game booths. Jax and McBurney, both patched in, hung back, but kept him in their peripheral vision like a moving piece of treasure they were guarding without ever saying so. Across the fair, 3 teenagers watched too, not like guardians, like wolves. "Bro, you see this?" said Tanner Briggs, 17, faded baseball cap turned backwards, Memphis Tigers hoodie half-zipped. His phone was already in his hand, screen casting a ghost light over his smug face. Mini outlaw in a wheelchair. His friend Cooper snorted, "Look at the little vest. Think he's gonna throw 2 fingers down at us?" The third, Liam, already half famous on local TikTok for mean-spirited pranks, raised his camera. This is gold. Hashtag Lil Cripple King. They started shadowing Ethan through the crowd as he rolled past the ring toss and balloon darts, eyes fixed on a giant plush tiger hanging from one booth. Every once in a while he looked over his shoulder, instinctively checking for his dad or one of the kings. He didn't see the boys slide in behind him, forming a half circle. "Yo, Lil King," Liam called, loud enough to make a few nearby heads turn. "You prospectin' for the baby chapter or what?" Ethan slowed, wheels wobbling slightly as his hands tensed. He processed sounds slower than most, but he knew that tone. Mocking, sharp. He turned his chair, searching for Jim, for Seth, for someone. Tanner stepped in front of him, foot planting on one of the front casters, stopping the chair cold. "Where you rollin' to, lil gangster?" Tanner jeered, phone aimed down. "Give us your mean biker face. Come on, do the outlaw thing." "Peas, please," Ethan said, voice catching. "Move, please." Cooper immediately echoed him in a twisted sing-song mimicry. "Move, please," he bleated, tongue out, shoulders rolling like a broken puppet. Liam's camera zoomed right in on Ethan's eyes. The stream title that popped up on TikTok, "Crippled King Tries to Join 1%. Chat exploded in laughing emojis. Tanner leaned down, fingers flicking the small LIL King patch on Ethan's vest. "Look at this. You got your own colors, huh? Big man. Bet your daddy's real proud of his little mascot." Cooper chimed in. "Fake tough guys. Old drunks playing dress-up, 1% cosplay. Bro." Then, with one cruel shove at the handle, Tanner jerked the chair sideways. The front wheel caught a rut in the gravel. Ethan's hand slipped. The whole chair tipped, metal slamming into dirt with a sickening crack. Ethan's elbow scraped hard across the ground. His cheek smacked the gravel. The stuffed tiger he'd won earlier tumbled out and rolled under a food truck. He didn't cry at first. He just lay there, face hot, breath shallow, one wheel whirring in empty air, while Tanner's laughter cut through him like broken glass. "Man down," Cooper howled. "Patch holder down." People stared. A carny glanced over, then back to his game. A mum pulled her kid away. Nobody stepped in. Ethan's throat tightened. His hands, always clumsy, clawed at the wheel to right himself. Pain shot up his arm. Dust filled his mouth. He tried so hard not to cry. Then Liam added a caption to the clip in real time. "River King's new mascot." Ethan heard his own hitching breath, felt the sting in his eyes, and the dam broke. He cried quietly, shoulders shaking in the dust, while the boys walked away, still filming, bathed in the glow of their own cruelty. They posted it before they even reached the funnel cake stand. By the time Jim found Ethan, Seth already kneeling beside him, lifting the chair, wiping dirt from his son's face. The video had 4,000 views. By midnight, 40,000. By sunrise, 300,000 people had watched Lil King hit the dirt. And buried in the comments, between the laughing emojis and the cruel jokes, a few people had started tagging another name. Number River King's MC. Someone wrote, "Ain't that Jim Rohn's kid?" Another, "Memphis bikers soft now? Y'all ain't gonna say nothing?" And one more, quiet and cold. "They just made a mistake they can't delete." The River Kings clubhouse sat off Summer Avenue in a part of Memphis. Most tourists never saw cracked asphalt, chain-link fences, and a low brick building with blacked-out windows and a single steel door. Above it, a hand-painted sign read, "River Kings MC. Memphis Chapter Est. 2009. Inside, the walls were lined with framed patches, folded American flags in shadow boxes, and photographs of men in desert camo who'd never made it home. A long wooden table sat in the center, scarred with cigarette burns and beer rings, surrounded by mismatched chairs. This was church. This was sacred ground. Sunday morning, the brothers gathered for coffee and cigarettes. Risk leaned back in his chair, boots propped on the table, telling some story about a bar fight in Tupelo. Seth sat quiet, cleaning his glasses. Jack studied a map for next month's charity run. McBurney poured another cup of black coffee, steam rising into the dim light, filtering through a high window. Jim sat at the head of the table, staring at nothing. His phone had been buzzing since dawn. Group chats, texts, calls from numbers he didn't recognize. He'd ignored most of them. He'd learned a long time ago back in Fallujah, back when the IEDs started coming faster than the intel, that sometimes the worst news came in silence, not noise. But then Seth slid his phone across the table, screen up, and said quietly, "You need to see this, Prez." Jim looked down. The video was already playing. He saw the fairgrounds, the neon, the crowd. Then he saw Ethan, rolling in his custom chair, vest bright under the lights. He saw 3 boys circle him, heard the mocking voices, watched Tanner plant his foot on the caster, heard his son's voice, small, scared, trying so hard to be polite, say, "P, please, move, please." Then the shove. The chair tipped. Ethan hit the ground. The wheels spun in the air. The stuffed tiger rolled away. And Ethan cried. Jim's coffee mug hit the floor and shattered. Nobody moved. The video looped. The comments scrolled. Laughing emojis, cruel jokes. Someone had written, "Biker mascot down." Another, 1% Junior got dropped. Jim's hands were shaking. Not the kind of shake that came from fear. The kind that came from a place he'd buried years ago under therapy sessions and VA prescriptions and promises to his son that he'd never be that man again. Risk leaned forward, voice low and dangerous. "We got names?" Seth nodded. Tanner Briggs, Cooper Hayes, Liam Darnell, all Cordova High, Daddy's Money, Mama's Facebook groups. McBurney's fist slammed the table. "We roll up tonight. I'll handle it." "No." Jim's voice cut through the room like a blade. Silence. He stood slowly, picking up Ethan's spare vest from where it hung by the door. The little LIL King rocker was crooked from being worn too much. He ran his thumb over the stitching. "Back in the day," Jim said quietly, "I'd have gone over there with a bat and a bad attitude and come home in cuffs or a bag. And every civvy watching would say, 'See, bikers, animals.'" He turned, meeting each brother's eyes in turn. "My kid doesn't need to see his old man become the monster they already think we are," Jim said. "He needs to see what real kings do." Risk's jaw tightened. "What's that, Prez?" Jim took a breath. He thought about the .22 patch on his vest, about the brothers he'd lost to bullets overseas and despair back home, about the night he'd sat in his garage with a .45 inches his lap, and Ethan had rolled in, asking if they could watch a bike show together. "We don't sneak," Jim said. "We don't jump kids in alleys. We roll in loud, in daylight, with our cuts on and our families with us. We make this whole damn city watch what respect looks like. And those 3? They're gonna learn the weight of every set of eyes they laughed at." He nodded at Jack's. "Call it. Family run. This Saturday. Memphis Midway Fair." Seth blinked. "Bring the old ladies, the kids?" "All of 'em," Jim said. "This ain't payback. This is a lesson." He picked up Ethan's vest, thumb brushing the rocker one more time. "They turned my boy into a meme," he said, voice low but steady. "We're gonna turn him into a legend." By noon, the word had spread. River Kings, family run, Saturday, Memphis Midway Fair. And somewhere across town, Tanner Briggs was still laughing at his phone, watching the view count climb, completely unaware that Memphis had just made a decision. The kind you can't delete. Tanner Briggs sat in his bedroom in Cordova, a suburb east of Memphis where the lawns were green and the driveways held 2 cars. His phone was propped on his desk, view count climbing like a slot machine. Cooper and Liam were blowing up the group chat with screenshots of comments and shares. Cooper: "Bro, we're at 400K. Liam: "I'm getting DMs from brands. LOL. Tanner: "Told you all this would hit." Downstairs, his father Mike Briggs sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through Facebook on his iPad. Mike worked middle management at FedEx, drove a Lexus, and had opinions about those biker gangs that he shared loudly at neighborhood barbecues. When he saw the video pop up in a local Memphis group, he watched it once, shook his head, and muttered, "Idiots." But he didn't know it was his son behind the camera. Not yet. Across town in Bartlett, Cooper's mother, Linda Hayes, was hosting her weekly book club, though nobody had opened a book in months. The real agenda was gossip, and today's topic was the viral video everyone was sharing. "Did you see that poor disabled boy?" one woman said, clutching her wine glass. "Absolutely heartbreaking." Linda nodded, lips pursed. "I shared it this morning. People need to see what's happening at these fairs, no supervision, and those biker people." "River Kings," another woman interrupted, voice dropping. "My husband says they're dangerous, like actual criminals." Linda's eyes widened. "Do you think they'll retaliate?" Nobody answered. In South Memphis, Liam Darnell sat alone in a cramped apartment, his mother passed out on the couch, third shift at the hospital, having drained her completely. Liam scrolled through his notifications, heart pounding with something that felt like validation. For once, people were paying attention. For once, he mattered. He didn't see the comments that had started appearing in the last hour. "Ain't that Jim Rohn's kid? River Kings MC gonna let this slide? Memphis bikers soft now." And then, buried deeper, colder, they just tagged the wrong kid. By Monday afternoon, a Memphis police sergeant named Dwight Carver sat in his office at the Shelby County precinct, watching the video for the third time. He'd known Jim Rohn for years, had pulled him over once, back when Jim was fresh out of the Marines and riding angry. They'd talked. Jim had shown him his discharge papers, his Purple Heart, the photo of his newborn son in the NICU. Carver had let him go with a warning and a handshake. Now Carver picked up his phone and called his captain. "We got a situation brewing," he said. "River Kings are being tagged all over social media. If they roll up to that fair, it's gonna get messy." The captain sighed. "You think they'll go violent?" Carver thought about Jim Rohn, about the 22 patch, about the way he'd looked at that photo of his son. "No," Carver said slowly, "but I think they'll go loud." Back at the River Kings clubhouse, Seth was pulling up social media profiles on his laptop. Tanner's Instagram, baseball games, parties, gym selfies. Cooper's Facebook, family photos, church youth group. Liam's TikTok, prank videos, clout chasing, desperation dressed up as confidence. "They're kids," Seth said quietly. "So's Ethan," Risk shot back. Jim stood by the window, watching the sun set over Summer Avenue. He thought about the boys, about their parents, about the system that taught kids that cruelty was content and humiliation was entertainment. "They didn't just hurt my son," Jim said. They laughed at him. They turned his pain into a joke for strangers, and nobody stopped them. He turned to face the room. "Saturday," he said, "we stop them." And in Cordova, Tanner Briggs finally saw the comment that made his stomach drop. A short video clip, a River Kings member reposting the original video with no commentary, just the club logo and 2 words, "We saw." For the first time, Tanner felt something cold crawl up his spine. "You think they'll actually come?" Cooper texted. Tanner stared at his phone, view count still climbing, and didn't answer. Wednesday night, the River Kings held church. The steel door was locked. Prospects stood outside, keeping watch. Inside, the brothers sat around the scarred wooden table, cuts on, phones off, the weight of the moment pressing down like summer heat. Jim stood at the head of the table, hands flat on the wood. "We all saw the video," he said. "We all know what happened. Now we decide what we do about it." Risk spoke first, voice tight. "Back in the day, we'd have rolled up with bats and left a message they'd never forget. That's what clubs used to do. That's what respect used to mean." McBurney nodded. "They put hands on a patch holder's kid. That used to be a death warrant." Seth leaned forward, glasses catching the light. "And what happens after? We beat 3 teenagers, get arrested, make every headline in Tennessee. Biker gang attacks kids. Ethan watches his dad go to jail. Is that the lesson we're teaching?" The room went quiet. Jax, the road captain, spoke carefully. "What if we don't go for blood? What if we go for something they can't ignore?" Jim looked at him. "Keep talking." "We do a family run," Jax said. "Full colors, old ladies, kids. We roll into that fair with 50 bikes, Ethan at the front, and we make those boys look every single one of us in the eye. We make them see what they mocked. We make the whole city see." Risk shook his head. "That's soft." "No," Jim said quietly. "That's smart." He looked around the table, at men who'd served in Fallujah and Kandahar, who'd come home broken and found brotherhood in chrome and leather. "I've seen what violence does to kids," Jim said. "I've seen what it does to us. We go in swinging, we prove every stereotype. We go in as family, we prove them wrong." He picked up Ethan's vest from the chair beside him. "This isn't about revenge," Jim said. "This is about showing my son, and every kid watching that strength isn't about fists. It's about standing up when the world expects you to stay down." Seth nodded slowly. "So we make it public. Daylight, witnesses, cameras." "Exactly," Jim said. "We don't hide. We roll loud. We let Memphis see what real brotherhood looks like." McBurney crossed his arms. "And if those boys don't show?" Jim's eyes went cold. "They'll show. Because if they don't, the whole city will know they're cowards." Jax pulled out a map of Memphis, spreading it across the table. "We meet here, truck stop off I-40, roll in formation, staggered 2 by 2 once we hit the city. Ethan rides point with you, Prez. We surround him, keep it tight." Risk leaned in. "What about the cops?" "They'll be there," Jim said. "Let them. We're not breaking any laws. We're just a family going to a fair." Seth smiled faintly. "A family of 50 bikers in full cuts." "Exactly." Jim stood, holding Ethan's vest up so everyone could see the LIL King rocker. "They tried to make my boy a joke," he said. "We're going to make him a legend." The vote was unanimous. By Thursday morning, the word had spread beyond the River Kings. Allied clubs from Jackson, Tupelo, even Little Rock started calling. A small veterans MC out of Nashville offered to ride down. The Iron Brotherhood, a club of former Army Rangers, sent a message. "We're in." Jim's phone buzzed with texts. "How many bikes you need?" "We got your back, brother." For Lil King. By Friday, the plan was set. 50 bikes, 3 clubs, families, veterans, a rolling convoy that would shut down Summer Avenue and make Memphis stop scrolling and start watching. Jim sat with Ethan that night in their small house in Fraser, North Memphis. Ethan was quiet, still bruised, still scared. "You don't have to go," Jim said gently. "If you want to stay home, that's okay." Ethan looked up, eyes wide. "Will the Kings be there?" "All of them," Jim said. "And more. Bikers from all over Tennessee. They're coming for you, buddy." Ethan's lip trembled. "Why?" Jim knelt down, eye level with his son. "Because when you wear that vest," he said, tapping the LIL King rocker, "you're not just my kid. You're their brother. And brothers don't let brothers roll alone." Ethan's eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't from pain. "I want to go," he whispered. Jim pulled him close, feeling the small, fragile weight of his son against his chest, and made a silent promise to every brother he'd lost, every flag he'd folded, every 22 he'd mourned. "We're gonna do this right." Saturday morning, the engines would roar, and Memphis would remember. By Friday night, Memphis was buzzing. The video had hit 500,000 views. Local news stations were starting to pick it up carefully, with headlines like "Viral Video Sparks," "Debate on Bullying and Disability," and "Local Biker Club Plans Response." Nobody was saying the quiet part out loud yet, but everyone knew something was coming. On Facebook, the Cordova Moms group exploded. Linda Hayes: "I heard the River Kings are planning something at the fair tomorrow. Should we keep our kids home?" Karen M: "My husband says they're dangerous. Actual criminals." Debbie T: "I saw the video. That poor boy. Honestly, if the bikers want to scare those bullies straight, I'm not mad about it." Linda Hayes: "Debbie, they're a gang." Debbie T: "And those boys shoved a disabled kid out of his wheelchair. Pick a side, Linda." The thread went on for 200 comments. At Cordova High, Tanner, Cooper, and Liam sat in the parking lot after school, staring at their phones. The video had been reposted by biker pages across the South. Someone had edited it with ominous music, and the caption, "They messed with the wrong family." "Bro, this is getting out of hand," Cooper said, voice shaking. Tanner tried to laugh it off. "They're not gonna do anything, it's all talk." But Liam wasn't so sure. He'd been scrolling through the River Kings Instagram, photos of charity rides, veterans' memorials, patches that said things like 22, never forget, and Combat Medic, OEF 2011. These weren't actors, these were real men with real scars. "What if they actually show up?" Liam asked quietly. Tanner didn't answer. At the Memphis Midway Fairgrounds, the owner, a grizzled man named Earl Dobbs, who'd been running the fair for 30 years, sat in his trailer office, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care if they're bikers or Boy Scouts," Earl said. "Long as they don't start a riot, they can come. Hell, might even be good for business." The voice on the other end, Sergeant Carver from Memphis PD, sighed. "Earl, if this goes sideways, it's on you." "It won't," Earl said. "I know Jim Rohn. Good man. Lost his wife to cancer raising that boy alone. If he says it's peaceful, it's peaceful." Carver hung up, but he still put in a request for extra patrol units, just in case. At the River Kings clubhouse, the parking lot was packed. Bikes lined up in rows, Harleys, Diners, Softails, a few old choppers that looked like they'd survived wars of their own. Men and women in cuts stood around, checking tire pressure, tightening bolts, going over the route one more time. Jack stood on the clubhouse steps with a map, calling out instructions. "We meet at the truck stop off I-40 at 0900, staggered formation once we hit Summer Avenue. Prez and Lil King ride point. Iron Brotherhood takes the flanks. No drinking before we roll. No weapons visible. No giving the cops a reason." Risk lit a cigarette, grinning. "We're really doing this, huh? Rolling into a fair like it's Sturgis." Seth adjusted his glasses. "We're doing this because it matters." McBurney cracked his knuckles. "And because those boys need to learn what happens when you mess with family." Inside, Jim sat alone in the dim clubhouse, staring at the wall of photographs. Brothers in desert camo, folded flags, a framed patch from his old unit, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, Fallujah, 2004. He thought about the men he'd lost, about the promises he'd made, about the night he'd almost become another 22. And he thought about Ethan, asleep at home, clutching his stuffed tiger, still scared but trying so hard to be brave. Jim stood, pulling on his cut, feeling the weight of the patches, the history, the brotherhood. Tomorrow, Memphis would see what the River Kings really were. Not a gang, a family. And families protect their own. Across town, Tanner's father, Mike, finally saw the video and recognized his son's voice in the background. The shouting started immediately. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Mike roared. "Those people are dangerous. You think this is a joke?" Tanner tried to defend himself, but his voice cracked. "It was just a prank, Dad." "A prank?" Mike's face was red. "You assaulted a disabled child and posted it online, and now a biker gang is coming for you." Tanner's mother stood in the doorway, pale. "Mike, what do we do?" Mike grabbed his phone. "I'm calling a lawyer." But deep down, he knew no lawyer could stop what was coming. Because this wasn't about the law. This was about respect. And tomorrow, at the Memphis Midway Fair, respect was rolling in on 50 bikes. Saturday morning broke hot and clear over Memphis, the kind of day where the asphalt shimmered and the air tasted like gasoline and possibility. At the truck stop off I-40 just east of the city, the parking lot was filling up with chrome and leather. 50 bikes, 3 clubs, families. The River Kings arrived first, engines rumbling in formation, cuts gleaming in the early light. Behind them came the Iron Brotherhood former Army Rangers, every one of them, patches that read OEF and OIF and 22, we remember. From Nashville, a small veterans MC called the Forgotten Few rolled in. Older men with grey beards and eyes that had seen too much. And at the center of it all, strapped securely to a custom trike that Risk had built and Seth had safety-checked 3 times, sat Ethan Rohn. His Lil King vest was clean and bright, his hands gripped the ape-hanger bars, his eyes were wide, taking in the sea of bikes and leather and family that had gathered for him. Jim knelt beside the trike, checking the straps one more time. "You good, buddy?" he asked softly. Ethan nodded, but his hands were shaking. Jim covered them with his own. "You're not alone this time. You hear me? Every single one of these people is here because they love you, because you're one of us." Ethan's voice was small but steady. "I'm scared." "Me too," Jim admitted, "but we're going to roll through that fear together. Just like always." Risk walked over, grinning, and handed Ethan a small American flag on a pole. "You're riding point, Lil King. That means you lead. You show Memphis what a real patch holder looks like." Ethan took the flag, clutching it tight. Jax climbed onto the clubhouse steps, raising his hand for silence. 50 bikers went quiet. "Listen up," Jax called. "This isn't a revenge run. This isn't about violence. This is about showing a 12-year-old boy that when the world knocks you down, your family picks you up. We roll tight. We roll proud. And we roll for Lil King." A roar of approval. 2 by 2 through the city, staggered once we hit summer. Prez and Lil King at point. Iron Brotherhood on flanks. Forgotten Few bringing up the rear. No speeding, no stunts. No giving the cops a reason. We do this right. Another roar. Jim swung onto his road glide, engine firing with a deep, throaty growl. He looked back at Ethan, gave him a nod, and said, "Let's ride." The convoy rolled out. 50 bikes, engines synchronized. A river of chrome and thunder moving through the streets of Memphis. People stopped on sidewalks to watch. Cars pulled over. A man on a porch stood and saluted. A woman filming on her phone started crying. As they crossed the bridge over the Wolf River, a group of veterans standing on the overpass dropped 2 fingers down in unison. Ethan saw it and, for the first time, smiled. They rolled down Summer Avenue, past pawn shops and churches and barbecue joints, the sound of their engines echoing off brick and glass. At a red light, a Memphis police cruiser pulled alongside. Sergeant Carver was behind the wheel. He looked at Jim, then at Ethan, then nodded once. Jim nodded back. The light turned green, and they rolled. By the time they reached the Memphis Midway Fairgrounds, a crowd had gathered. News vans, cameras, families. And standing near the entrance, pale and shaking, were 3 teenagers, Tanner, Cooper, Liam. The bikes pulled into the parking lot in perfect formation, engines cutting off almost in unison. The silence that followed was heavier than the roar. Jim dismounted slowly, resting a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You ready, Lil King?" he asked. Ethan looked at the crowd. At the cameras. At the 3 boys who'd shoved him into the dirt. And he nodded. "Time to roll through your fare the way you should have the first time," Jim said. And together, surrounded by 50 bikers and a city that had finally stopped scrolling and started watching, they walked toward the entrance. The boys didn't run. They couldn't, because Memphis was watching.